All right. Good morning, boys and girls. We ate on the objectives and homework. One of the elements that is there is complex and compound sentences. Okay, so this is the PowerPoint presentation explaining what complex and compound sentences are, and commas in general, and a little bit of grammar. As I recall, on written production number 2, many of you made many mistakes regarding punctuation. Now, for the final written production, I just want to remind you that this is not going to count as a mistake. However, if you don't make mistakes or very few mistakes, then you're going to get bonus points for that. Okay, I decided not to evaluate elements that were not covered in class. So before we begin, I'm going to talk about clause here because whenever we talk about complex and compound sentences, the word clause is going to be used a lot. So what is a clause? A clause is defined as a group of words that contains a subject and a verb. Example, I like to play outside. In this case here, this is a clause because you have your verb, you have your subject, and then the rest of the sentence over there. There are two types of clause in English. The first one is independent clause. This is defined as if the group of words makes complete sense on its own. The car broke down. So this is a perfect sentence from a structural point of view. And there's dependent clause. The group of words does not make sense on its own. This, obviously, in the title, the name, and the word dependent means that it depends on something else. So, for example, when I was on the highway, you cannot have this sentence on its own. It doesn't make sense. Okay, it depends on something else. So what you do in this case is, if you structure your sentence that way, the car broke down when I was on the highway, then the sentence makes perfect sense. There's another type of clause, but we're not going to be using this here. It's called Santa Claus. Okay, but this is for another PowerPoint. So before I talk about complex and compound sentences, I just want to talk briefly about semicolon here. So if you write this sentence in your text, Kristen knew the risk of going through gender transition process. She was scared to lose her job. This here is, if you do this, I'm going to underline this punctuation. I'm going to write PCT. PCT stands for punctuation, and the type of mistake that it is a comma splice mistake. It means that you put a comma where you shouldn't have put one. Why is this? Because this is called an independent clause. Christine knew the risk of going through gender transition process. You could put a period there and it makes perfect sense. She was scared to lose her job. Also, it makes sense. This is another independent clause, right? So in order to fix this, instead of putting a comma there are two ways. Whether you put the semicolon over there, Kristen knew the risk of going through gender transition process. She was scared to lose her job. Or you could decide to put a comma, but put a conjunction there. Kristen knew the risk of going through the gender transition process, so she was scared to lose her job. Okay, so these are two ways that you could correct that mistake. Now, watch out, because a semicolon can be used between two closely related independent clauses, provided that they are not already joined by a coordinating conjunction. That's very complex, but I'll explain. Okay. Christine knew the risk of going through gender transition process. She was scared to lose her job. The reason why you can put a semicolon over there is because these two independent clauses are closely related. Kristen knew the risk of going through the gender transition process. She likes apples. Obviously, you can't do this here because they're not related. They're not closely related one to another, right? All right, let's talk about compound sentences. In your text, if you write a sentence like this, we both loved the book, but Kim hated the movie. Okay, I'm going to underline it, and then this is a punctuation mistake. Okay, again. Now here in this sentence, the sentence contains two independent clauses with two different subjects. So we have we and Kim. So the comma is required here. Okay, so in order to fix that, we both love the book, but Kim hated the movie. A compound sentences is when you have two independent clauses. So this is one independent clauses, this is one independent clauses, okay? So comma applies, independent clauses, independent clauses. In order to fix this, you just have to put the comma. Now, in a compound sentences, you're gonna find what we call coordinating conjunctions, okay? The coordinate or what is called coordinators. Coordinating conjunctions are part of the word fanboys. What does that mean, Mr. Nick? I don't understand. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Fanboys. These are the first letters, just a way to remember that these coordinating conjunctions are part of the compound sentences. Okay, so this is why here we both love the book, but Kim hated the movie. So that's why you put a comma there, because it's a compound sentence. Now, the comma will be used 90 to 95% of the time in a compound sentence, unless the verbs share the same subject. But keep in mind that it's going to be used most of the time. Okay, most of the time. Now, I like apples, bananas, and strawberries, and I also enjoy watching movies. These here, this makes sense. This is a correct sentence. Why? Because here you have commas because it's an enumeration. So there's more than 3 items, so you put a comma there. I'm going to talk about it in another PowerPoint presentation. And the reason is because here, again, these are 2 independent clauses. So, and you put your conjunctions over there, coordinators over there, and then it requires a comma over there, because there are 2 different ideas in a way. Okay, if you have more information on the where to put the comma or comma rules, then you can click on this link, and it's going to provide more links. A complex sentence or complex sentences are the following. If you write this here, I could not sleep, I was thinking about all the work I had to do. If you put a comma there, PCT, again, comma applies because you put a comma where you shouldn't have put one. Why, Nick? The reason is very simple. You have, in this case, an independent clause. I could not sleep yesterday. Perfect. But if you only take that part of the sentence without any context, I was thinking about all the work I had to do. If you cannot have this sentence on its own, this is a dependent clause. Okay, so whenever you have an independent clause and a dependent clause, you cannot just put the sentence over there. What is it that you have to do? You have to add what is called subordinating conjunctions, because, before, that, which, after, whenever, where, although, unless, until, whatever. There's a bunch of them. Okay, the subordinating conjunctions are called, there's a mistake, sorry, are called hard word, because it turns 2 sentences into one. Okay, I could not sleep because I was thinking about all the work I had to do. So in this case, since you've put the subordinating conjunction over there, the sentence doesn't need, the complex sentence doesn't require a comma. Okay, now this is interesting. Okay, or is it? I don't know, you tell me, but depending on how you structure the sentence, it's going to require a comma. Okay, here. Okay, if you start with the independent clause here, I could not sleep because I was thinking about all the work I had to do. In this case here, this, from a structural point of view, it makes perfect sense. So if you start with the independent clause here, independent clause, that's perfect. Now you could decide to start with the dependent clause first and the independent clause second. Because I was thinking about all the work I had to do, I could not sleep. In this case, you need to put a comma. Both structures of each sentence it makes sense, but if you start with the dependent clause, then here between both you need a comma. All right. Thank you very much. Bye bye, guys.